The world around Amara felt strangely quiet, as if sound itself had been swallowed by the air. She stood alone in a long hallway that seemed to stretch without end. Everything was covered in soft white light, gentle, glowing, almost heavenly. It didn't feel like a normal place. It felt like a moment trapped between reality and something deeper, something spiritual. Her bare feet touched the cold floor as she took a slow step forward. The silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Amara knew she was dreaming, yet the air felt real enough to breathe, real enough to fear. At the end of the hallway, something caught her eye. A shape. A bright shape. As she moved closer, her heart began to pound, not fast, but heavy, like each beat carried a weight she couldn't understand. There it was. A wedding dress. It hung from a simple wooden frame, glowing quietly under the white light. The dress was beautiful, soft, flowing, and perfect in a way that didn't belong to the real world. The fabric shimmered as if tiny lights were sewn into it. The sleeves were delicate. The lace looked handmade. And even though Amara had never worn anything like it, the dress felt familiar. It swayed gently, even though there was no breeze. Amara's breath caught in her throat. A strange mix of emotions washed over her, wonder, fear, and a sadness so deep it almost hurt. The sight of the dress pulled memories she thought she buried long ago. Her broken engagement. Her heart lying in pieces. The look of disappointment on her mother's face. The sleepless nights where she cried quietly so no one would hear. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself, but her body felt weak. She took another step closer. And another. Each step felt like she was walking toward a truth she wasn't ready to see. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to touch the dress. The moment her skin brushed the fabric, a shock of warmth ran through her hand. The dress felt alive, almost breathing. Amara gasped softly. Then, a faint voice echoed from behind her. Amara. She froze. The voice was soft, distant, almost like it was traveling through layers of time. She turned quickly, looking down the long hallway, but there was no one there. The light at the far end flickered slightly, like a candle about to go out. Again the voice came. Amara. This time, it sounded closer. Sadder. More urgent. Her heart raced. She took a small step back from the dress. The light around her began to dim, shadows growing longer around the edges. The wedding dress stopped swaying and became perfectly still. A cold breeze rolled through the hallway. Before she could call out, before she could run or reach for the dress again, the dream shattered, completely, like glass breaking into darkness. Amara shot awake. Her breath came in sharp, quick bursts. Her skin was damp with sweat. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest, as if still running from something she never saw. She pressed her hand against her forehead, trying to calm herself, but the fear from the dream clung to her like dust. She sat up slowly, wiping her palms against her blanket. Her room was dark but safe. The sound of distant traffic came through the window. Nothing strange. Nothing magical. Still, the dream stayed with her. That hallway. That voice. That dress. Especially the dress. She placed her hand over her chest, feeling the strange warmth still lingering inside her, almost like the dress had left a mark on her. It was just a dream, she whispered to herself. But she knew it wasn't just a dream. Not with how real it felt. Not with how it made her heart feel heavy and warm at the same time. Dreams could be warnings. Or messages. Or blessings. And even though she tried to shake it off, Amara couldn't escape the quiet feeling that something in her life was about to change, and the dream was the first sign. Morning light slipped through Amara's thin curtains, painting soft lines across her bedroom wall. She blinked slowly, still feeling the heaviness of the dream from the night before. Her body was awake, but her mind remained trapped in that long white hallway, standing before that wedding dress that refused to leave her thoughts. She tried to shake it off as she got out of bed, but every movement felt slower than usual. Even as she brushed her teeth, the dream played again behind her eyes, her hand touching the dress, the voice calling her name, the sudden darkness. It stayed with her like a shadow. Amara dressed for work and tied her hair back into a simple ponytail. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked a little tired, a little lost, but there was something else there too. A quiet worry she couldn't explain. Just a dream, she muttered again, forcing herself to smile at the mirror. But even she didn't believe her own words. At the office, things were normal. Phones ringing. People typing. Soft chatter filling the air. Life moved like it always did, but Amara felt disconnected, as if the dream had placed her behind a thin wall of glass. She forced herself into work mode, responding to emails and sorting files. The routine brought some comfort, but the strange warmth she felt when touching the dress in her dream kept rising in her chest like a memory she wasn't ready for. Around midday, her phone buzzed on the table. She ignored it at first, assuming it was a reminder or a random notification. But it buzzed again. And again. With a sigh, she reached for it, and froze. Her heart dropped into her stomach. The message was from Zuri. Her childhood friend. Her almost sister. Her lost bond. The girl she hadn't spoken to in years. Amara's breath hitched. Her thumb hovered over the screen. A rush of emotions hit her all at once, shock, confusion, a surprising hint of fear. Memories she'd buried long ago came rising like waves during a storm. With shaking hands, she opened the message. It was a digital wedding invitation. Beautifully designed. Simple gold and white. Elegant fonts. Flowers in the corners. And then, the picture. The wedding dress Zuri planned to wear. Amara's chest tightened painfully. It was the same dress. The exact same one from her dream. Her fingers trembled. She stared at the image, forgetting to breathe for a moment. The lace. The sleeves. The gentle shimmer. It was all identical. "What is happening?" she whispered under her breath. She sat back in her chair, feeling the world spin a little. Her heart pounded, hard and fast, like it wanted to break free from her chest. Why would she dream of this dress? Why now, after so many years of silence between them? Why would Zuri invite her, after everything? She swallowed hard, feeling a deep ache forming inside her. Memories returned in flashes, girls laughing together, sharing secrets, planning futures. Then the hurt, the misunderstandings, the silence that grew heavier with each passing year. Amara forced herself to read the message. Amara. I hope you're well. It would mean a lot if you came. Simple words, but they struck her like a punch to the heart. Her eyes stung with emotion she didn't want to feel. She put the phone down and covered her face with her hands. After all these years, why now? A quiet battle began inside her. Part of her wanted to delete the message and move on with life. Another part felt pulled, softly but strongly, toward something she didn't understand. Is this dream a warning? She whispered, staring at the dress on her screen. Or, is it a sign? Something telling me to go back? The question felt heavy. Her heart answered before her mind did. Maybe the dream wasn't meant to scare her. Maybe it was meant to push her toward something she'd been avoiding for too long, the truth, forgiveness, or at least closure. She closed her eyes and breathed slowly, letting the fear inside settle for a moment. The warmth she felt in the dream returned, filling her chest again. It felt almost like a gentle nudge. A sign. Finally, she picked up her phone again. Her hands were still shaky, but her decision felt strangely calm. She whispered to herself, I have to go. Not because she was ready. Not because the past didn't hurt. But because the dream had opened a door she could no longer ignore. And deep inside her heart, she felt it, something was waiting on the other side. Something she needed to face. Amina woke the next morning with an unusual heaviness in her chest, as though the dream had followed her from the night into the daylight. The image of the wedding dress hanging alone, swaying gently in the silent dreamscape, clung to her mind stubbornly. As she moved through her morning routine, the world around her felt slightly off balance, the sunlight too sharp, the air too still, her own reflection strangely distant. No matter how much she tried to shake it off, the dream lingered like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts. There was a quietness in the house that made her uneasy. Her siblings whispered among themselves, exchanging glances when they noticed her. Her mother watched her with a softness that felt unusual, almost knowing. It unnerved Amina. She sensed something beneath the surface, a shift, a change, something waiting to reveal itself. Her heartbeat carried a nervous rhythm she couldn't explain. A sudden knock at the door shattered the uneasy silence. It was firm, deliberate, and strangely cold, sending a shiver through her. She paused mid-step, feeling an instinctive tightening in her stomach. Her father moved to answer it, while Amina stood frozen, gripping the edge of the table as though bracing for impact. The door opened, letting in a gust of cool morning air, and with it, a sense of something inevitable. A woman stood outside, dressed neatly, carrying a sealed envelope in her hands. Her presence felt formal, almost ceremonial, as if she were delivering something sacred. She greeted Amina's father politely before asking, "Is Miss Amina home?" Amina stepped forward, her heart pounding, her palms damp. The woman extended the envelope toward her with both hands, a gesture that carried quiet significance. The envelope felt heavier than it looked. Its texture was luxurious, the sort used only for important occasions, and a faint floral embossing decorated its edges. The design struck her, sending a strange chill down her spine. It was the same pattern she had seen on the wedding dress in her dream. Her breath hitched. Without saying a word, she took the envelope and retreated to her room, closing the door behind her as gently as she could with shaking hands. She sat on her bed and slowly broke the seal. The letter inside was beautifully written, the script elegant and flowing across warm-toned paper. Her eyes locked onto the first line, "You are cordially invited." Amina's heart hammered in her chest as she read further. It was a wedding invitation, a grand celebration happening in just 3 days. The name sent a jolt through her. The bride belonged to a family Amina had once known well, but had drifted away from for reasons no one ever clearly discussed. The realization that someone from her past wanted her presence now created an unsettling confusion. She read the letter again and again, hoping she was misinterpreting something, but the truth didn't change. Her dream, her house's strange quietness, the unexpected visitor, everything suddenly felt connected. The wedding dress she had seen in her sleep now seemed less like a random dream and more like a sign. A warning? A message? She didn't know. But she felt watched by fate itself. When she stepped out of her room, her parents' faces told her more than their words ever could. Her mother tried to look surprised, but there was a flicker in her eyes that betrayed familiarity. Her father asked a few gentle questions, but his tone felt too controlled, too careful, as though he already knew what the letter contained. Their reactions deepened her unease instead of comforting her. Amina returned to her room, the invitation trembling between her fingers. She sat on the edge of her bed, trying to steady her breath as a whirlpool of emotions pulled at her, confusion, fear, disbelief, and a strange, quiet pull towards something she couldn't name. Her life, once simple and predictable, suddenly felt like it was standing at the doorway of something much bigger than herself. She looked out the window, staring at the pale morning sky. The same sky she had seen in the dream, the same sky now holding her future. Her voice was barely a whisper as she murmured to herself, "Why me? Why now? She had no idea that accepting this invitation would unravel secrets buried for years, and draw her into a destiny she never imagined. Amina spent the rest of the day in a fog, holding the invitation as though it were something fragile and dangerous at the same time. Every time she looked at the embossed floral design, her stomach tightened, and the memory of the dream returned with a sharper edge. She felt as if the universe had placed her at the center of something she didn't understand, a puzzle she had never asked to solve. The quiet of her room wrapped around her, but instead of comfort, it made her feel trapped with her thoughts, surrounded by questions that refused to settle. Her mother eventually came to check on her, knocking softly but not entering until Amina allowed it. She sat beside her with an expression that tried to be reassuring but instead carried unspoken tension. Amina asked her how the family from the invitation knew her, why she had been invited after so many silent years, but her mother only responded with vague answers, nothing direct, nothing satisfying. Each incomplete reply deepened Amina's suspicion that her parents were hiding something. Their caution felt less like protection and more like fear. As evening approached, Amina stepped outside the house to breathe. The sky was painted in deep oranges and fading blues, and the air had cooled just enough to calm her pounding heart. She needed clarity, but all she found was the echo of the dream, the wedding dress suspended in empty space, waiting. She wondered whether the dream had been a warning, a piece of fate, or simply her mind reacting to something she had forgotten. The more she thought about it, the more she felt a strange pull toward attending the wedding, as if she wouldn't be able to rest until she faced whatever awaited her. Her father joined her outside silently. He didn't speak at first, just stood next to her, watching the sky. Amina sensed he wanted to guide her but didn't know how. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. He told her that some invitations come not from people, but from life itself, and refusing them sometimes leads to heavier consequences. Though his words were vague, the heaviness behind them made Amina's heart thud harder. It was the closest thing to an honest warning she had received all day. That night, Amina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Every tiny sound in the house seemed amplified, the ticking of the clock, the rustle of the wind outside, the faint movement of the curtains. She kept seeing the dream replaying in her mind, the dress, the silence, the sense of being watched. She tried to shake it off, but the dream felt too purposeful to ignore. A part of her believed that if she refused to go to the wedding, she would be rejecting something vital, maybe even an answer to the uneasiness she had been carrying for years. Sleep only came in short, restless waves. When she finally drifted off, she didn't dream of the dress again, but she felt the same presence, gentle, distant, urging. She woke up before dawn with a strange certainty in her chest, a decision forming even before she fully opened her eyes. The wedding invitation sat on her bedside table, catching the faint light of the sunrise. It looked less threatening now, more like a path she was meant to step onto, even if she didn't know where it would lead. By morning, she told herself the truth, she had to go. Not out of obligation, not out of curiosity, but because something deep inside pushed her toward the unknown. Avoiding the wedding would not bring peace, it would only leave her haunted by questions. Attending meant confronting whatever was calling her, however unsettling it might be. When Amina finally informed her parents of her decision, their reactions confirmed her suspicion that they had anticipated this outcome. Her mother tried to hide her worry behind a tight smile, while her father nodded solemnly, as though a long-awaited moment had arrived. Their responses didn't calm her, they only tightened the knot of tension inside her. Still, she felt a strange courage rise within her, fragile but present. As she prepared mentally for the journey ahead, a quiet resolve settled in her chest. The dream, the invitation, the unspoken tension, everything pointed toward a truth she needed to uncover. She didn't know what awaited her at the wedding, but she knew she was no longer running from it. Whatever fate had set in motion, she was ready to follow it. The days leading up to the wedding moved slowly, every hour stretching longer than the last as Amina prepared herself for the journey she had decided to take. Even though she tried to stay calm, a persistent tension clung to her mind, reminding her that this was no ordinary event. Each time she glanced at the invitation, she felt the same quiet pull that had pushed her to accept it, a force that felt larger than her, older than her memories, as if destiny had been waiting patiently for this moment. She packed her clothes with trembling hands, feeling both anticipation and dread grip her in equal measure. The house seemed to shift around her as she made preparations. Her mother hovered close, offering small reminders and gentle suggestions, but her eyes betrayed worry she couldn't quite hide. Amina sensed her mother wanted to say more, to warn her of something, yet held back out of fear that revealing too much might change the course of what was meant to happen. Her father's presence grew quieter, more contemplative. He watched her with a kind of sadness, as though he saw her stepping toward a path he could not walk beside her on. The night before the journey, Amina stood in front of the mirror, carefully laying out the dress she planned to wear for the wedding. It was simple but elegant, chosen with caution rather than excitement. As she gazed at the fabric, she felt an unexpected wave of doubt wash over her. Was she doing the right thing? Would attending the wedding bring her clarity or drag her into something she wasn't prepared to face? The memory of her dream flashed sharply, the empty space, the hanging dress, the stillness that felt like a warning. She closed her eyes and took a long, steadying breath, reminding herself that turning back now would leave her wondering for the rest of her life. Later, when the house had grown quiet and her siblings were finally asleep, Amina stepped outside for air. The night sky was deep and clear, dotted with stars that shimmered like silent witnesses. The cool breeze eased some of the tension from her mind, but not all of it. She felt watched again, not by someone, but by fate itself. The calm of the night allowed her fears to surface more clearly. She wondered why the dream had come to her, why she had been chosen to receive the invitation after years of no contact, and why her parents responded with such strange caution. Every unanswered question made her heart beat louder. As she stared up at the stars, she remembered fragments of her childhood, the places she used to visit, the people she used to know, the bonds that had frayed quietly over time. Somewhere in that past lay the family that had sent her the invitation, and perhaps the key to understanding the dream. Something inside her whispered that she was returning to more than just a wedding. She was returning to a forgotten truth, a wound buried in silence, or a promise made long ago. Sleep came slowly again that night, restless and shallow. Amina woke several times, her heart pounding as though someone had whispered her name in her dreams. By dawn, she felt exhausted yet strangely strengthened. She dressed carefully, smoothing the fabric of her clothes with steadying breaths. Her mother helped with the final touches, her hands gentle but trembling. Her father walked her to the door, placing a quiet blessing on her journey. Their expressions said everything their words avoided. They feared what she might discover, but they knew she had to go. Amina stepped outside with her small travel bag, pausing for a final glance at her home. The morning air felt crisp, almost cleansing, and the sky glowed in soft sunrise hues. She felt a mixture of courage and vulnerability settle in her chest. Her life, once predictable, had now shifted into unfamiliar territory, and there was no turning back. With each step toward the waiting transport, she felt the pull of something unseen guiding her forward. As the vehicle started moving, her heart tightened. The road ahead stretched long and winding, disappearing into places she had not visited in years. The world outside her window blurred into colors, and Amina felt a strange ache, a blend of fear, curiosity, and a quiet sense of destiny. Whatever waited for her at the wedding was not just a celebration. It was the beginning of a revelation. That night, sleep came to Amara like a heavy blanket, pulling her in before she could even gather her thoughts. The weight of the day, the tension from her conversation with Zuri, and the unresolved pain in her heart all followed her into her dreams. This time, she didn't find herself in the quiet white hallway from before. Instead, she stood in a dark, empty space that felt cold and hollow, as if the world around her had stopped breathing. In front of her, the wedding dress appeared once again, but it was no longer still or beautiful. Flames crawled up its hem, rising slowly, eating away the delicate fabric. The fire crackled softly, lighting up the darkness with a haunting orange glow. Behind the burning dress, she could see a faint shadow, a figure with slumped shoulders, trembling as though crying. Amara tried to step forward, tried to help, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. A sense of helplessness wrapped around her chest, making it hard to breathe. The burning dress continued to glow brighter, and the shadow behind it raised its head as if trying to speak. Before any words could form, a loud crack split through the dream, like the sound of glass breaking. The fire burst upward, swallowing everything in a blinding flash of light. Amara jolted awake with a gasp, her heart racing, sweat clinging to her forehead. She sat upright in the guest bed, clutching the sheets as if they could steady her shaking body. Her breath came fast and uneven, the image of the burning dress still sharp in her mind. She didn't understand the meaning, but one thing was certain, the dream was no longer just unsettling. It felt like a warning, heavy and urgent. Morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and warm, but Amara felt none of its comfort. She washed her face with cold water, trying to steady her thoughts. Each splash brought back the same questions: why was the dress burning? Who was the crying figure? What was she supposed to do? Her mind spun with fear, curiosity, and a strange sadness she couldn't explain. She went downstairs to the small dining area of the lodge, hoping food or conversation might ground her. The place was quiet, with only a few people seated at scattered tables. She had just taken a seat when she noticed the same elderly woman from the wedding venue slowly making her way toward her. The old woman moved with the calmness of someone who had seen far too much in life to ever be in a hurry. Her eyes, though aged, held a deep clarity, a sharpness that made Amara sit up straighter. Without asking, the woman gently placed a cup of tea in front of her and took the seat across from her. For a moment, she said nothing, simply watching Amara with a soft but serious expression. Then, in a low voice that held both wisdom and severity, she spoke. "Some dresses," she said, "are not worn for beauty. Some are worn for closure." The words lingered in the air, thick with meaning Amara couldn't fully grasp. She swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. The woman continued, "Dreams don't come for nothing, child. They call you when your heart is ready, even if your mind is not." Amara felt a chill run down her spine. The woman's words struck too close to the nightmare she had just escaped. She wanted to ask what she knew, how she could possibly understand, but the woman stood before she could speak. With one last knowing glance, she walked away, leaving Amara even more confused than before. As she sipped the warm tea, she tried to make sense of everything. The dream wasn't random. The burning dress wasn't just fear, it was a message, a symbol of something tied to her past and her future. She felt her breath slow as understanding began to settle quietly inside her chest. Later that afternoon, while helping with small preparations at the venue, Amara overheard a conversation that made her stop in her tracks. Zuri wasn't marrying Kato. She was marrying someone else, a kind man she had met only months ago, someone who treated her gently and brought peace into her life. Amara's heart trembled as the pieces began to shift. The dreams weren't about danger. They weren't warnings about betrayal or repeating old pain. They were guiding her toward something she had long avoided: closure, forgiveness, and the possibility of letting go. As the realization settled deeper, a small breath escaped her lips, a breath that felt like the first step toward healing. The dream of the burning dress wasn't showing destruction. It was showing the end of an old story, one that needed to burn away so a new chapter could begin, for both her and Zuri. For the first time since she arrived, Amara felt a fragile sense of clarity forming within her, like light breaking through clouds. Whatever was coming next, she understood that she was meant to face it, not with fear, but with readiness. The hours before the ceremony passed in a quiet, tense rhythm. The venue buzzed softly with the sounds of decorators making last-minute adjustments, bridesmaids arranging flowers, and distant laughter from guests arriving early. But Amara felt strangely detached from all of it, moving through the space as if she were walking underwater. Her mind kept circling the dream, the burning dress, and the revelation she had learned, that Zuri was marrying someone new, someone gentle. A small weight lifted from her chest, yet a deeper unease lingered beneath it. She sensed something was still unresolved, something fragile hiding beneath Zuri's cheerful exterior. When Amara stepped inside the bridal suite to check on her, she found Zuri sitting on a low stool, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was half done, her hands resting stiffly on her lap. At first, Amara thought she was simply tired. But then she noticed how pale Zuri's face looked, how her chest rose and fell in small, fast breaths. Just as Amara opened her mouth to speak, Zuri's shoulders shook, then she collapsed forward, catching herself weakly against the table. The room filled with panic as the bridesmaids rushed toward her, but Amara reached her first, cradling Zuri gently as she trembled. Zuri tried to speak, but her voice came out thin and broken. Her lips quivered, her breathing uneven, her eyes filled with fear she could no longer hide. Amara felt her own heart race as she whispered for someone to bring water, but Zuri grabbed her wrist with surprising strength, refusing to let go. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as she struggled to form words. Finally, she choked out something that made the entire moment freeze around them. "I thought you wouldn't come. I thought you still hated me." The words hit Amara like a blow. She had expected tension, maybe awkwardness, but not this level of fear, not this depth of emotional exhaustion. Zuri's sobs grew harsher, her voice cracking as she continued, "I carried it, for years. The guilt. The silence. I thought, if you walked through that door today, maybe it meant I wasn't unforgivable." Her face twisted in pain as she clung to Amara's hand, her tears falling fast. "I was scared you'd turn away from me. Even now." Amara felt her own eyes sting, her chest tightening at the sight of Zuri breaking so completely. All this time, she had thought she was the only one carrying old wounds. She never imagined Zuri had been living in fear too, fear that Amara's absence meant hatred, fear that their friendship had died because of her mistakes. The realization softened something deep inside her, something she hadn't even known was still hard. As Zuri's breathing steadied a little, she reached shakily for a small box on the table beside her. She pressed it into Amara's hands. Confused, Amara opened it, and inside lay a delicate silver bracelet, one they had chosen together many years ago, promising to give it to the other on their wedding day. Her breath caught. Zuri whispered, voice fragile but full of sincerity, "I wanted you to wear it today, because I wanted you beside me. As my maid of honor." The room seemed to fall silent. Amara stared at Zuri, stunned, her heart swelling with emotion she couldn't contain. She had not expected this. She had not imagined that after years of distance, Zuri still held her in such a sacred place in her heart. The gesture was so pure, so full of love and regret, that it overwhelmed her. For a moment, all Amara could do was hold the bracelet and breathe, deeply, painfully, gratefully. In that quiet, trembling moment, she realized that the wedding wasn't just about vows and celebration. It was also about healing. And Zuri had been waiting, hoping, praying for this reconciliation, even when Amara didn't know it herself. You've hit the free plan limit for GPT-5. Responses. Amara took a deep breath, the weight of years pressing on her chest, and nodded gently. She accepted the role of maid of honor, feeling a strange mixture of humility, relief, and anticipation. Standing there in the quiet bridal suite, she realized that this moment was far bigger than any dress or past grievance. It was a chance to finally step into forgiveness, to bridge the gap of years filled with misunderstanding and silence. Every fear she had carried seemed to soften, replaced by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Zuri looked up at her, eyes glistening, a trembling smile on her lips. Amara approached, holding the dress with care, as though it were sacred. She ran her hands lightly over the fabric, remembering the surreal dream from months ago, the long hallway, the swaying dress, the shadow of uncertainty. Now, seeing it in reality, she understood. It wasn't a warning of loss or danger. It was a symbol of healing, of a friendship that had been tested by time and circumstance but had survived, waiting patiently for this very day. Together, they began the preparations, moving slowly through the rituals of dressing. Amara helped Zuri into the gown, the fabric brushing softly against her own hands. Every fold, every pin, every careful adjustment became a silent acknowledgement of what had passed, the pain, the miscommunication, and the long silence. They worked in quiet understanding, sharing small smiles and tentative glances, each one a step toward the trust they thought they had lost forever. Their hands brushed, and the warmth of that simple contact sent a rush of memory and forgiveness through Amara's chest. They spoke, too, quietly at first. Apologies came with halting words, each one carrying the weight of years. Tears flowed freely, mingling with laughter as they remembered the good times, the silly fights, the moments of deep connection that had defined their childhood friendship. Amara admitted her own failures, how she had held on to bitterness instead of seeking clarity, how silence had allowed misunderstandings to fester. Zuri spoke of her own shame, her fear of rejection, and the anxiety that had haunted her leading up to the wedding. By the time they finished, the air between them felt lighter, almost luminous, as if the room itself had absorbed their pain and replaced it with understanding. The ceremony began soon after, and Amara stood beside Zuri with a steady heart. Watching Zuri walk down the aisle, glowing with happiness, brought tears to her eyes. Each step Zuri took seemed to release a piece of the past, leaving behind only joy and peace. Amara's gaze followed her friend, feeling a sense of liberation she hadn't realized she craved. The wedding was no longer just an event to witness, it was a testament to endurance, love, and reconciliation. During the vows, Amara noticed how naturally laughter and joy had replaced tension and fear. Friends and family gathered, but the most important presence was the bond between these two women, strengthened now beyond measure. Amara held Zuri's hands during small moments of the ceremony, a subtle but powerful sign of support, friendship, and shared healing. Every gentle squeeze communicated more than words ever could, a quiet promise to honor the trust restored between them. After the ceremony, as guests cheered and celebrated, Amara allowed herself a moment to breathe, to let the emotion settle into her body. She looked at Zuri, radiant and unburdened, and felt a profound gratitude. The dream, the fears, the long journey back to reconciliation. All had led to this moment. She realized that the wedding dress she had once feared was never about tragedy. It had been a guide, a bridge to forgiveness, a symbol of enduring friendship, and the possibility of self-healing. Holding it now, touching the delicate fabric, Amara understood its true purpose. The day wound down into a serene evening, with golden light spilling across the grounds and laughter echoing softly in the background. Amara felt lighter than she had in years. She had stepped through fear, confronted the past, and embraced a future where forgiveness and love could coexist. As she watched Zuri dance with her new husband, radiant with joy and unburdened by the ghosts of old pain, Amara smiled softly, feeling peace settle deep within her heart. The journey had been long and fraught with emotion, but it had led her here, to freedom, understanding, and the quiet, unshakable power of redemption. As the last of the guests departed and the wedding venue quieted, Amara stepped outside into the gentle evening light. The air was cool, carrying the soft scent of flowers and the faint echo of laughter that lingered like a warm memory. She walked slowly, her footsteps light on the path, her heart unburdened for the first time in years. The events of the day, the tears, the apologies, and the long-awaited reconciliation with Zuri had left her feeling a serenity she hadn't known was possible. Every tension, every doubt, every lingering shadow of the past had finally begun to dissolve. Amara's mind drifted back to the dreams that had guided her here, the swaying wedding dress in the empty hallway, the burning dress in the dark dreamscape. She realized now that they had never been harbingers of fear or danger. They had been signs, delicate and cryptic, calling her to face the past, to embrace forgiveness, and to allow herself to heal. The symbolism that had once confused and frightened her now brought a quiet joy. Dreams, she thought, were sometimes not warnings but invitations, invitations to reconcile, to release, to grow. She closed her eyes for a moment and pictured the wedding dress swaying gently in her mind once again. This time, it no longer carried the weight of uncertainty or sorrow. Instead, It represented peace, healing, and the freedom that comes when old wounds are acknowledged and released. Amara felt a warmth in her chest, a lightness she had not felt since before heartbreak, before silence, before the years of distance. She walked forward into the evening, ready for new beginnings, open to love, friendship, and the possibilities that life could now offer. The past had found its closure, and Amara felt, at last, unshakably free.